Hello again. This presentation is about running a meeting with Weaver. In the last video, I showed you how to set up for a meeting, and we created a meeting with a number of agenda points. If you haven't seen that, you probably want to watch that first. But now we'll talk about how to record the attendees of the meeting, take notes, create action items, and create decision objects. So here's the meeting that we had, planning for a block party. And there's a couple of things. People have been sent email about this, and they're able to access this meeting page. If they would like, they can click on the calendar icon here, and this will download a calendar file which will place a meeting reminder on their own calendars. So the date and the time comes for the meeting, and you have to manually put it into run mode. So putting it into run mode says we're now running the meeting. People can access this during the meeting. There's different styles of meetings. Most people are running a face-to-face meeting. You're sitting around a table, you're in an actual room, you're in a room with a bunch of chairs and maybe a podium. In that case, most of the meeting is going to happen right there, live. And that's the most effective way, most efficient way to run a meeting. Once you've been prepared for it, you bring everybody there and have the meeting. But more and more often, there are meetings being held long distance where people are joining over the phone. They're joining through some sort of desktop sharing software. And in that case, they're using a computer, they're seeing things on the screen, and they will probably be accessing this meeting record itself. So you can also look for some participation there. And there's another aspect to this, which is we're not always available at the place and time of the meeting. And so if you know you're going to miss a meeting, you can still participate by going in advance and putting in a comment, so that basically saying the points you'd like to make. Now, of course, it's no real replacement for being there, but it's better than nothing. So you just have to decide if that's worthwhile. Now, a lot of people, when they run a meeting, they have an opening round, and you'll go through and make sure that everybody's part of the whole meeting. Now, I didn't make an opening round in this, but the first thing you can do in a meeting is actually make changes to the agenda. So I'm going to move the opening round up to the top. And as this meeting typically goes, we'll probably have a closing round as well. So let me go ahead and do that. Start and close the meeting. If your style of meeting is that way, you probably would have put those in the first place. Now, as people show up to the meeting, you can record their attendance. It's very easy to add yourself. You click this button and you become added in there. And anybody can do this. So anybody in the meeting, they can go click there and add themselves. That way they know they've been recorded as being there. Or since some people may not have access to computers and some people may not be into the whole meeting on a website thing, you can easily enter them also in by using their email address. So you have a record of who actually attended the meeting, and this is of course separate from the record of who was invited. So we get to the opening round. Now, sometimes it's the person who is running the meeting that is taking the notes. Sometimes you have the note taker as a separate person. Either way, you can take your notes directly into here. Now you have a couple of options: comments, proposals, rounds, and minutes. But for a meeting, what you really want to be doing is creating minutes. The difference between a minutes option, it's very much like a comment, but it doesn't send email, and it's not designed to be sort of a discussion. It's just a place to enter things in and store. So I'm not going to enter anything intelligible here, but you can easily imagine that if I was I could take notes here and keep track of what was being said. In an opening round, you might be asking each person what their current status is. So you would enter that in here just as notes. So it's just text-based notes. It's really simple, straightforward. When you click post here, that becomes an entry in here. So you're finished with the opening round, you go to the next one, you start discussing that, you start taking notes on the second item. And maybe in some cases, if we move on to the third one, there's already a comment here. That's okay. I can still take my minutes as a separate item right next to that. And you can go back and re-edit these as many times as you want. In the case of a comment, the person who made the comment can go back and re-edit that also as many times as they want. So you're working your way down the agenda. Now, what you want to be doing in meetings is making decisions. So if you get to the point where it looks like you're coming to consensus on something, you're coming to agreement, and you think you can make a decision, again, if everybody is in the room and there, the most efficient way is going to be to look around the room and do this face to face. Someone would make a proposal and you would see if everybody agreed with that. That's the sociocratic way of doing it. You don't vote and pick something that the majority of the people vote on, but instead you make a proposal and make sure that everybody's in agreement with it. You can do that specifically in the system. So for example, in this case of choose a band, if you decide to go with the Green Tomatoes, you could, whoever's taking the notes, whoever's doing that, could make a proposal, and that is, we should get the Green Tomatoes for the band. Okay, so you put that in there, and what that does is it gives you the proposal there. This is shared. This is actually sent out in an email message, but it also gives you a place to put your answer in. So you can now click on this and say either consent or objection. If you have an objection, you need to give a reason for it. If you consent, you don't need to give a reason for it, but you can if you want. So I heard them. They are great. Now I could also go and log out and log in as different users and enter some other comments in here. Okay, I logged out and I logged in as those two users, and I put in comments for them. So this is something that they could do. If you're having an online meeting, they could enter in their answers directly into this proposal object. If this was a proposal that is being made, a big serious proposal, and you may want to give it some time for people to consider, like a few days, then people could come back at any time over those couple of days, and maybe you want to consider the answer, discuss the answer in the following meeting. There's a couple of different ways you can do it. You can see there's a deadline on there that it's due in 6 days, so we put a default deadline of 7 days on there, but you can change that. Well, in this case, everybody consented. We had everybody agree on that, so that's great. What I can do is, as the start of this, I can close it and basically say, okay, that resolves it. That's the band, and we just do that there. Now, I've finished the round here, but I want to record this in the decision space. We've made a decision here, so I can create a decision, and it's going to copy the text into here. Now the reason we copy it in, but we'll let you edit it. State your decision as clearly as possible. Often the comments and the proposals are part of the context of a meeting. So there's a lot of stuff going on, so you understand what's going on. People can use simplify the language. But a decision is designed to stand on its own, so that somebody reading this 3 months from now can just go and see the decision and understand it. So you have to spend a little bit of time to give it the chance to stand on its own. Now, we created the decision, and I'll show you the list of decisions. So now it appears in the list of decisions. We started on the Green Tomatoes for the band, and that's all this is the decision list is a way of bringing these decisions that happen in the middle of this big conversation, bringing it out to one place where if somebody was joining the group new, they could see the decisions that were made when they were made, and able to then sort of understand how these are going to guide the behavior of the group going forward. Okay, but let's go back to the meeting, and let's say, for example, in the case of a caterer, we don't have such a good proposal. We're actually still trying to determine things. So, there's a couple good ideas that people have tossed out there, but we need to get a quote. and somebody needs to go do that. So that's where you bring in the action item idea. So on the Proposacator, we can say, let's go look at the action items, and I'm going to create a new action item here. So get quote, or maybe get 3 quotes. Okay, and this, we're going to assign this to somebody, right? Somebody needs to go do this, so we'll assign this to Alex, and I can put some additional details in here on exactly what you want. I can assign a due date if it's the kind of thing. I mean, we need this urgently, so maybe we will set a due date there. But we'll create the action item, and now it is now attached. And you work your way down to the bottom of the meeting. You're now done with the meeting. You've handled the meeting, you've taken notes all the way through it. We can switch this now into complete the meeting. So a couple of things happen. One is that we have a button here to generate the minutes. The minutes have not been generated yet. That is a separate document, but it pulls it from everything that's been done here. So let me go ahead and do that. I'll click generate the minutes, and it'll pull that together and it'll make a separate document for us. The minutes appear in draft mode. So I can post the minutes without looking at it, but that's not a wise thing to do. Let me click on that and take a look at it. Okay, so what I like to do is edit this a little bit. You know, for my minutes, I don't really need the do so often do that. I sometimes take out some of this extra things that are here. But notice that the opening round, the minutes item was added in here, the comment. Here you get the discussion and how each person responded, whether it was consent or object, and what their comments were. When you're entering the comments in and you're entering things in during the context of the meeting, you sometimes make it sort of simplified. What you may want to do here, what I often find you have to do, is change the language a little bit so that it stands on its own, so that somebody who wasn't in the meeting would understand it. But anyway, that's the standard thing that you have to do anyway. It got you most of the way to having minutes, and depending on how formal your group is, you know, this may be enough to do it. So I'll just save my changes. I've changed them. I can now post the topic here, or I can go back to the meeting itself, and I will see here in the meeting that I can post the minutes here, and that basically sends an email now to all of the members. So now everybody has a email with the minutes in it. There's one more thing to do, and that is to prepare for the next meeting. Now, you remember we set up everything for the first meeting. Meaning the second meeting is much easier, because what we're going to do is use the clone operation. So the clone operation fills in a lot of things for you. Copies stuff. You can change the description a little bit. You can change the date and time, you know, whatever. But most importantly here, you can copy the agenda items across, whichever ones you want to. For example, you already chose the band, so you might want to leave that one out for the next meeting. But all of those other agenda items still make sense to include those. So we will now press clone the meeting, and it automatically adds 7 days to the meeting. Maybe that's what you wanted. Maybe you're not having a weekly meeting. Maybe it's a different rate. So you would go in here and change it to what the, maybe you're having a monthly meeting. So you'd pick the date and put it in there, pick the time, like that. And now you're sort of ready to go. You've got an agenda ready for the next meeting. You're all set up. The same people are assigned. You may want to change that. You may want to change some of the descriptions and put it back into plan mode and send an email just like you did the first time. So you would send an email right now to everybody letting them know that the meeting was coming up. And that's it. So what I've shown you in this video is running a meeting. We started the meeting, we recorded the attendees, we started taking notes in different ways. The opening round, we started notes on each of the agenda items, we created an action item, we did a round, we made a decision, then we completed the meeting, we created some minutes, and then we cloned the meeting for the next meeting.